Hey Doc, I want to talk about doing locums with young children. And as you know, I am an expert because it is fairly uncommon for people to do locums when they have young children. And based on all of the comments that I see in these groups and all the consistent questions, I was a trailblazer in that respect because I did locums with babies, pregnant, all sorts of things when I first started, and it worked very well for us and our family. And so people ask that question all the time about how to do it. How can I make it work? Should I just wait until they're older? So I just want to talk about my perspective. And I say my perspective because I do have a unique perspective, a perspective that is often brushed off immediately because people are like, oh my gosh, I could never. But I want you to, as with everything that I talk about, come at this with an open mind and consider the things that I am saying, even if it feels like it's not aligned with the type of person you are, the type of mother you are, to really challenge yourself and say, okay, well, why do I think this way? Can I try certain things? Because you may actually align and feel good about some of the things that I am saying that would have traditionally made you think like, oh my gosh, I could never. Okay, so keep an open mind. And I would also say that I think if I started doing locums when my first was a baby, I would feel differently. So there's definitely a little bit of second baby bias where just in general, you're just a calmer mom. Things aren't as important. They're not that serious. So I will say that I had my first when I was fully employed and there were not a lot of risks being taken. I am going to talk about that a little bit later on because I still think I was actually more absent when I was fully employed with my first, which is, I think, a big thing that people worry about. But in general, I do think that first baby may have made me a little bit more cautious. So I would understand if first time moms may be very apprehensive about doing locums with their first baby, not because it's not recommended, it was unsafe or makes them a bad mom, but just because when you're a new mom, everything just seems so much more serious than it actually is. And then when you have your second, third, fourth, you're like, they'll be all right. Okay. So going back, as I said, I had a COVID baby, 2020, was fully employed, then left employed practice in 2022 when my son was just two, like a couple weeks before his birthday, actually. That's when I left that job. Oh, that's such a fond memory because I got to be at home in Trinidad with him for his birthday. And that's also when we cut off his hair because his hair was long. And this is like this folklore thing in Trinidad, I think in the Caribbean, that you let boys' hair grow out at least until they're two, or at least until they start talking is what it is. I don't know where it comes from. It's probably one of those old African things that persisted through time and we have no idea why we do it. But he had just cut his hair and we were going to Trinidad and I was like, yeah, I'm out. And as you probably know, if you listen to the podcast, I had zero plan. And, I say that my plan was, yeah, I'll just do locums. That was the plan. But there was no contract in hand. I was not credentialed yet. I did a month of nothingness and then I got credentialed and started doing locum. So that would have been mid-April when I left, 2022. And by July 31st was my first locums shift. So I took the entire summer off. And by then I was pregnant. So I had a 2-year-old and I was maybe, I don't know, like 10 weeks pregnant or something when I started. So my son had nannies for the first 2 years. And then by the time I started doing locums, we had put him in daycare and we had an evening nanny. So she worked from like 4 to 8. So we always had that type of support. And also my husband was in school. So he was technically home. So we had people to help us. And because I had a small child and I was now pregnant, I never went far. So for a long time, I only did locums in California. And because I refused to accept low rates, the closest place to me was 4 hours driving. And I chose close because I had this young child. So I know I didn't want to be gone for weeks at a time. I know I didn't want to travel to other states. However, I was not accepting piddly rates. So the closest place that I could get that I could go and come fairly quickly and still get the rate that I wanted was about 4 hours driving. And the reason I didn't fly is because it was in the middle of nowhere and there were no airports. So I would have driven 2 hours to get to the airport, to fly to somewhere, to then drive 3 hours. It didn't make any sense. So I just drove. And I would only be gone for 24 hours. So it may sound crazy, but it worked for me at the time. I would drive down there for call, do the 24-hour call, and then drive home post call. It worked very well. The place was not that busy, and it allowed me to be home a lot, and it allowed me to make a lot of money and just be gone for a short period of time. And I will say, I never worked locums full time. It was never my intention to have this be an income replacement for my full time job. It was just that I wanted to continue practicing, and I knew I never wanted to be employed again. So it was something that I did. And I had other things that I wanted to pursue. So it would be a little bit different in that respect as well. I did not work that many shifts. And actually, from when I started in that, so it was basically August until the end of the year, I did like 13 24s, and I made like 100 grand. It was great. But I wasn't really gone that much. I still made a third of my salary doing 13 24s, and I was home the rest of the time with my son. It was great. And yeah, he missed me, but I FaceTime him a lot, and I really wasn't gone that much. So it was really not a big deal. And he had his father, and he had the consistency of the nanny. And this is also the same nanny who he doesn't even remember the name of right now, because he was two. That is the glory of doing these types of things when they're very young. They will not remember. So everybody, I constantly see this narrative of, oh, well, I think it'll be easier when they're older. It is probably easier on you when they're older, because you see their little cute face and they're crying, and you feel guilty, and I shouldn't be leaving a baby, and they will not remember. It is the best. They will not be scarred either, because you are leaving them with capable, loving people, your husband and whoever is helping your husband. So I don't suggest trying to do this without any type of support at home. I don't think that would have been tenable. It certainly wasn't for us. And I just realized, I said my son was in daycare. He was actually in Montessori school. Not that it matters, but that's what it was. So by the time I had my daughter, my son was still in Montessori school, and we still had the nanny. And I thought that was very important for him to have that consistency while there was a new baby around, so it wouldn't be too much of a rocking of his world. We actually kept him home because it was during flu season, and I was paranoid about stuff like that. So I didn't want him going back and forth to daycare. That was a mistake, BT dubs. I don't recommend that. Let them stay fully in their full routine. Lord, please. Yeah, I would. If I would do anything over, it would be to not keep my son home when my daughter came. And during this time, because I was postpartum, I had my mom initially, and then my mother-in-law came to stay with us. And that's when I went back to doing locums, now having to be pumping. And while it was challenging-ish, again, I was working very close, and the places were not that busy, and they all had fridges or freezers. So I would pump and keep my milk, and I would drive home with big coolers of ice. I would stop along the way and get ice at these random places in the middle of nowhere. And I would bring the milk back home, and she had the milk, and then I breastfed on demand when I was home. And it actually wasn't that big a deal. I did start doing locums in Texas during that time, because that's a part of my story where we were considering moving to Houston the first time around. And I wanted to get credentials at a hospital and start meeting people and things to prepare for my own practice that I was going to open. And doing locums was just an easy way to get in there, where I would get trip paid for and credentialing handle and all this stuff. So I was just like, yeah, I'm going to take this job in Houston. So I did actually fly basically out of state. I was never gone for more than a week. And I was able to lean on Dr. Milk to get recommendations for traveling with Milk. And I always stayed in, what was it called? A residence inn, because they had like a full kitchen with a fridge that had a real freezer so that I could actually freeze the milk. I got a big Yeti, one of those big, really expensive Yeti coolers, but like the strap one, and all of these ice packs. So I would fly home with fully frozen milk. I had my printout from the TSA about traveling with milk, and so that they know if they ever give you any trouble, they're like, no, this is fine. They don't like dip their hand in the milk. They don't take it and throw it away. Some TSA agents would open it and like test above it or something like that, but that was rare. Most of them, when they saw milk, they were like, oh, go ahead, go ahead. Like they were, in general, very respectful and never gave me a hard time. And again, my son was in daycare. My husband by then had started a job, but we had my mother in law with us. And it was having my mother in law with us that I realized, we both realized, oh, we need live in childcare is where it's at. And it was during that transition that we joined the au pair program because the support of somebody living in is just unmatched. So I really feel like it worked very well. And the biggest reason that it worked so well was because when I was gone, I would FaceTime them. It was hard. I hated pumping. That was a challenge. But when I was home, I was home. I was like a stay at home mom. I was there for my children way more than I was when I was employed. And actually, this is a story that I am almost never tell, and I won't actually tell it full right now. But I had a legal issue with my first nanny. And she actually told the judge, it was like a phone call. She's like, yeah, she was never home. And I just remember feeling like that was like a slap in the face. I'm like, screw you. Like my son doesn't even remember who you are, but he certainly remembers who I am. Whatever. Anyway, but she was right. I worked a lot when I was fully employed. And when I was home, like how much was he awake? Because I did 12-hour call every week and my hours ran late. That was 1 hour away. So for 1 to 2 days out of the week, I would be gone before my son woke up and I would be back when he was already asleep. And, like with when I was doing locums, I was just home. It was wonderful. So yeah, you're going to be gone, but it is unmatched, the kind of presence that you're able to have when you can come and go as you please, and that when you're off, you're off. I think the biggest question people have, or the biggest reservation, is about leaving a small baby. And again, I want to repeat that these are my opinions. These are the opinions of a two-time mom and of a mom who just thinks differently than a lot of people anyway. But I would encourage you to really hear me, right? Babies need a warm body. I know I came out swinging. A 3-month-old baby, yes, they need you. Yes, you may be pumping or breastfeeding, but they need somebody who is going to feed them and love them and care for them. You will not damage them by not being around. And if they have the warm, loving attachment of other adults, there is no damage that is going to be done. They need a strong, responsible, loving person. If that's you, great. But I refuse to believe, after carrying this child, after caring for them for a couple months, because I'm not advocating for you to start locums at 6 weeks postpartum, right? So we're assuming that everybody's going to be like 3 months, right? After living inside of you, leaving your body, being with you all the time for 3 months, that you being gone a couple days out of the week or even a week at a time is going to irreparably damage this child. It is impossible. That is not going to happen. So I think more people with babies and young children should consider this because of what I said before. They won't remember. Your 12-year-old is going to remember that you left. And I still think that is fine. Again, because when you're home, you're so much more present. They're probably going to notice and still it'd be fine. But if you're talking about who's going to be upset that you're leaving, I think the 6-year-old who could articulate it is worse than a baby who is just like, oh, well, the milk is here. And for those people who say, my child doesn't take a bottle, again, from a second-time mom, your child will not starve. I used to be so upset when people would tell me that. When I had my first, the number of moms that told me, your child will not starve. But it is true. If you are not there, you are physically absent, it is highly unlikely, unless there's some medical condition, that your child will not take the bottle. You have to be gone though. So I see that as a reason where people are like, well, no, I'll bring the baby with me, and because they don't take the bottle. Human beings are resilient. We have lasted a very long time, and there is no way that your exclusively breastfed child is going to starve if you are gone for a full 24 hours, 48 hours for a full week. That's not going to happen. So if there are other reasons, fine, but that's not it. Okay. And I think it is a good option, especially if you're using your locums as a travel opportunity. If it's like a home call opportunity where it's not that busy, to have the entire family come. To me, especially because my husband was working at this point, it was never an option. It also just seems like a large disruption of a routine for a baby, where I think more important than me being physically present is the routine for the baby. And because we were so militant about sleep and feeding, dragging a baby on a plane and in a hotel just so I could be close to them, I feel would have been more disruptive than keeping my daughter in her space, on her routine, with her family, in a place that she slept excellently in. It was like a no-brainer. Right. So if you want to have it be a family experience where everybody comes, your husband works from home and it would be great, then have it be that. But if you're only considering bringing the entire family because you're worried about the baby being away from you, I would encourage you to consider all of the logistics of bringing your entire family, all of the costs. That's eating into all of the good money you're going to be making as locums, because you're paying for extra plane tickets, bigger hotel rooms or additional hotel rooms. If you're bringing a nanny with you, like that's just a lot of stuff when you can just go by yourself. And logistics aside, if you've been listening to this podcast, if you know me at all, you know how important I think it is that we have the ability to be alone. And this is another time where you have an opportunity to be truly alone and to be with your thoughts, to care for yourself, to not be requested, to not be needed, to not be sucked on. You may be pumping, so that's less of a luxury in this time, but it is important. So if you're thinking, oh, I'll be lonely, will you be? I think it is a skill to be alone and to be still, to be with your own thoughts, to be able to entertain yourself and to just be able to rest. So I almost challenge you to take this time to practice being alone. It's not like we're in the dark ages where you'll never see your children. You can still FaceTime. You'll be home soon enough. Like you can do like I did and have small spurts where you're gone, or you can take locums jobs that aren't that far away. And if it means you take it a little bit of a lower rate, you can do that. I don't agree with you taking a lower rate for this reason. I don't agree with people taking a lower rate for many reasons. The only reason is if you've been out for a long time or you have some issue where you need to work ASAP and you have less wiggle room to negotiate. Notice I didn't say no. You always have room to negotiate because you are the prize, you have the power, but you have external circumstances that make it more important for you to get any job than to get a high paying job. Fine. I'm not one of those people that will shame people for doing what they need to do, but taking a lower paying job, like low, just because you don't want to go further because you have a baby, I feel like it's almost like it's not worth it, because you're going to have to work more to have it be financially successful, which means you're going to be away more, which kind of is counterintuitive, right? If you went further and made more, you could be gone less and you'll be home more for the baby, right? Another thing is, if you're like, well, my kid is 2 and they cry for me and it's really difficult when I'm gone, I want you to think about what that means in the grand scheme, because to me, it means that you are unsupported. That's what I hear when somebody says their child can't be without them for more than 24 hours or more than a couple hours. It means that you don't have other responsible, capable, and helpful adults that are there to share the responsibility of parenthood with you, to support you. Because if your child was around enough of these people in a real significant way, you being away wouldn't be that big a deal. Not that they wouldn't be sad, not that they wouldn't cry a little bit, but to have it be a complete meltdown where you cannot be away, that tells me that there could be improvement in your support network and that this is a situation that you're actually creating for yourself. Because a child that's being raised in a true village is going to enjoy time with grandparents when mom is gone, is going to be sad, but have a nanny who is a constant, who is reassuring them that mommy will be back, showing them pictures, keeping them engaged in their activities. They're going to have a father who is going to be enough for them and give them an equal level of love and support, equal, just different. They're going to have that if you are truly supported, and your child is not going to lose their minds if you leave for a little bit. And speaking of husbands, this is an under-acknowledged benefit of doing locums at any age of your children, baby or up until 18. You being away is of benefit to not just you because of the alone time and everything we talked about, but your husband and your children. You being gone allows your husband to step up and take care of the house. It allows him to create his own routines, figure things out in his own way, bond with his children in a way that is impossible if you are always around because the dynamic changes. It is a gift to your husband for you to not be there. I'll say that again. It is a gift to your husband and your child or children for you to not be there. And this is not just me saying something that I believe firmly, because I am. This is from talking to docs with older children and from men and husbands who have had this opportunity, either by force or by chance, to develop their own relationship, to figure things out on their own, and to feel more secure in their role as a father. If you are always around, always dictating how things go, how things are done, when baby sleeps, when baby eats, he never has the opportunity to figure it out on his own. It is always on your terms. And actually, I was watching That Was Us podcast. If you don't watch it, you should. If you never watch This Is Us, then that's a whole other doc, really. Watch This Is Us and then watch That Was Us, which is the rewatch podcast. Sterling K. Brown was talking about that. He said that exact same thing, where his wife thinks that the children will be on the street destitute and the house will be burned down if he doesn't follow all of her exact instructions. But he sent a message to moms that they got it. They will figure things out in their own way, and it is important for them to do so. And I totally agree. And they were talking about a part in the series, This Is Us, where Kate left Toby with their son. It probably wasn't a good example of this because his son did choke, but he choked and Toby saved him. He did his baby CPR and everything was fine. And they truly bonded. So again, maybe not the best example, but it actually is a good example because he became so much more secure in his role as a father. He became so much closer to his son in that time without the presence of his wife. And it's not that y'all have a bad relationship or you're overbearing. The dynamic just changes when mommy is around. That's just a fact. So give your husband the gift of being gone to provide for your family and form a unique relationship with his children, form his own way of doing things, make his own memories while you're not there. So that is how I handled it, doing locums with a 4-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. And those are all of my thoughts about why you can do it too, and why it is actually better to do it when they're that small because they won't remember anything. And you can, as you're doing it, set things up so that when they're older and they actually do remember, and there are more activities and more things that you really want to be present for, you would have created this life where it's a given. Work a lot when they're young. So you have so much money so you can kind of switch down. You can pursue other passions that give you more of a flexible schedule. Do all that stuff when they're young and they won't remember, but they will remember the feeling of a present, happy, healthy mom. And that's what doing locums offers to you. Falling in love again with medicine, practicing medicine on your own terms. All of these things are a great benefit, and I would hate for you to miss out on these benefits because you think you can't do it because your children are too young. So let me know if there are any other specific questions that you have. If you've been thinking about doing locums and you're like, I don't know, the baby is so small. And, of note, when I said I would record this podcast, it was in response to a post in one of our locums groups. And the doc that posted was like, how do you leave a newborn and do locums? And she was like, in the same paragraph, was like, the baby is 3 months and she hadn't started credentialing yet. I was like, that baby's not a newborn. Strictly from OBGYN neonatology standpoint, newborn stage ends at like 28 days, right? Am I crazy? 1 month, baby is no longer a newborn. So first of all, you're not leaving a newborn, and she hadn't even credentialed yet. By the time she would start locums, that child would be 6 months old. That's a grandbaby. No pun intended. And all of those things are important because the story you're telling yourself about how terrible this would be is half of the battle. Like, it's making this step even scarier than it needs to be. Because, yeah, if you're saying, yeah, I'm going to be leaving a newborn to go and do locums, who's going to sign on for that? But if you say, I am going to be gone for a few days and my 6-month-old is going to be in a safe, loving space with people who know how to care for him, who are responsible in his routine, and I'm going to be back and there for him and fully present because I have the freedom of locums, that feels different, right? It feels doable. So how you talk to yourself about this, the things that are bouncing around in your mind, are very, very important. And I wanted to share my perspective because I know that there are not a lot of people who have successfully done locums with small babies. So it's a very unique perspective. And I really want to encourage you to try it. Consider it, doc. It was the best decision. I would not go back and change it for the world. And I am so glad that I burnt out too fast so that I could not stay at my employed position. I was just so glad I had the freedom, and I was already broken out of this mindset that I need to be employed by this time, because it was great. It's why I'm even here at this point, to be able to have the freedom to pursue other things. It is a true blessing, and I'm glad that I took the leap. And I hope that this will encourage you to seriously consider it if you were hesitant before about doing locums with young children. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and share this episode with a doc who's like, yeah, I think I want to wait until the kids are older. Tell her, no, doc, I heard Dr. Toya talk about how she did it with young babies, and I think it's doable. She said, all you need is live-in childcare. And just to go back to that point, you don't need live-in childcare. It would be better, in my opinion, but consistent. What you need is support. Keep telling y'all, my message is the same. The answer is always the same. You need a supportive village, a supportive home structure that doesn't only revolve around you taking care of these kids. If that's the case, leaving a child at any age is not going to be as big a deal as you think, but definitely a young baby, right? Get your support. If you're like, I know I should get some help, but I don't know, and now I'm considering locums, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity. And of course, doing it in a way that feels good to you and feels aligned is always what's the most important. And I hope this will help you get to that point. All right, Doc, I'll see you on the next episode of Stethoscopes and Strollers.